In today's Leeds news, Willy Gnonto Golden Boy nomination, Adams and Aaronson will leave, Rodrigo and others to Sevilla, how does Victor Orta's situation affect Leeds, Leeds managerial latest, Victor Johansson being monitored by Leeds, Summerville is an Everton target, and the under-21s to be impacted by Premier League 2 format change. Morning, folks. Jay here on Wednesday, the 21st of June at The View with your Leeds news. I hope you're all having a really good week so far. There's a fair bit to get into today. We won't faff about, but this is the one a week. So if you're a fan of the channel, if you like what we do, you can help us grow by subscribing or liking the video. That would be amazing. And that's it. Right, let's move on. Let's get into this. We'll start off with congratulations. And Willy Gnonto has been nominated for his second consecutive Golden Boy Award. If you don't know what the Golden Boy Award is, it is essentially the under-21 variant of the Ballon d'Or. It is Gnonto's second one. He's currently ranked in 70th in the world in that age bracket. And did quite well last year in it as well. But as I've written in my notes here, his performance this year could depend on what club he's playing for. Leeds fans very heavily involved in the voting last year, as it is a public vote. And again, I would imagine if Gnonto manages to stay at Leeds, there'll be a heavy Leeds United support behind that as well. And we do love an online vote. So there's that. Talking about players who could be leaving Leeds, there's a fair bit of this today, and there's going to be a bit, I'd say, for the next couple of weeks. We'll start with Aaronson and Adams, not Adamson and Aarons. Adams and Aaronson. And according to Fabrizio Romano, Tyler Adams and Brendan Aaronson will leave Leeds United this summer. Speaking yesterday to Morning Footy, Fabrizio Romano stated that Adams is the more likely to go with Premier League, his goal. Romano was responding to a question asked what was the future of Tyler Adams and Brendan Aaronson at Leeds and would they go and play in the Championship, and Romano said that they will leave, especially Adams. He said there's Premier League interest, mainly Forest. They're a big fan at the moment, he said, but there are 2 or 3 other clubs interested in bringing in Adams, and I'm looking for permission to speak to the player from Leeds. Aaronson, he said there's a couple of Premier League clubs interested, but the bulk of the interest from Aaronson is coming from the Bundesliga, and they expect both players to move once Leeds give them permission. They said that the new manager situation and the director of football situation at Leeds is what's causing the delay in some of these exits. This might not be a bad thing. Players may be hanging on to speak to whoever the new manager is going to be. Let's talk about other players leaving. Rodrigo came out yesterday. There was a rumor yesterday broke that on the back of Victor Orta moving to Sevilla, that Rodrigo Moreno was also now going to leave Leeds and could be Victor Orta's first signing as the new director of football for Sevilla. Victor Orta will obviously know the finer details of the Leeds United players' contracts, clauses and everything else, and this could be used strategically by Orta to bring in certain players to help Sevilla, who will be playing in the Champions League next year after winning the Europa League, to bolster that squad. Rodrigo's fee or release clause is said to be £3.5 million, and this is interesting. When we talked about this yesterday on Just Joe's show, where Andrea Russo made the point of how a mistake by the Leeds United director, Victor Orta, will benefit the Sevilla director of football, Victor Orta, in this situation. A very small release fee, and again, tied in, as Andrea said last night, ties in with Leeds' belief that relegation was impossible to put a £3.5 million release fee in a contract for your record signing at the time. What it does say, Copa do say the deal could actually be a free transfer, and that the $3.5 million is actually made up of add-ons and wages and everything else, but Leeds might actually not receive anything for the player at all. However, this is a big however, Victor Orta himself was interviewed yesterday, and when he was asked about Rodrigo, he said the following. Yesterday, I sent him a congratulatory message for the Nations League. If that's where the rumour comes from, then it's a bit exaggerated. So Orta, who likes to talk and likes to be public, has already done a press conference, which is hanging the door, has already started leaking information to Fabrizio Romano. We've started seeing stuff come out from Sevilla. We've seen the same with Leeds when he was here at Leeds as well. It's a very clear line of sight there between the two. But he is saying that this rumour is exaggerated, and that all he has done is spoke to the player and congratulated him on his Nations League win. So again, this is just kind of one we're going to have to wait a couple of days and see where the dust settles on this. And we'll move on to the next situation, which will tie in with this. And it's, how does Victor Orta's situation affect Leeds, or how could it potentially affect Leeds? Joe Donoghue in the Yorkshire Evening Post done a really good piece this morning on this and how he sees it. And as mentioned before, his knowledge of the full contract details, release clauses, bonuses, finer details of these contracts that aren't known by clubs, which can, lengthen negotiation processes. Orta having this information will obviously shorten that process and will be a benefit to Sevilla if they are targeting certain Leeds players. Donoghue says in his piece that the finer print of the contracts could speed up the signings, but he also goes on to say that unless it is stipulated in the terms of Orta's exit from Leeds that he cannot use privileged information to benefit a new club, then he can do what he wants. Essentially, it needs to be a non-compete or a no-go clause in his contract for a set period of time. Stuart Webber, looking as a director of football, he's looking at 12-month non-compete, leaving his role in Norwich. That stops anybody from coming in straight away and essentially just picking off your players. Victor Orta's obviously gone straight into a job, so obviously there's no non-compete there. It was a mutual termination, so you would imagine there was some sort of payoff, there was some sort of remuneration package put in place, and you would hope, usually there's terms and conditions that go with that, and you would hope that that's the case here. However, Donoghue makes a very good point after this by saying that this could actually benefit Leeds, and Leeds could use this as an opportunity to get rid of some players and get a transfer fee for players that they no longer want to have at the club. Players that are seen as dead weight around the place are not part of the new Leeds plan moving forward, which is a very, very good point. It is a good opportunity to get rid of some unwanted players should Orta want them. He signed them all before. He believes in them, apparently, and he's very close to a lot of these players. So, it could go both ways. I hate to see Rodrigo leave. I really, really do. I've really liked Rodrigo for a long time. I'd be sad to see him go. But anyway, looks like that could happen, but we'll wait and see what happens over the next couple of days. And Tyler Adams is also a player that's been mentioned. We're going to Sevilla as well. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. The opportunity of Champions League football is a big one. It's a big thing for these players, especially people like Rodrigo who are heading towards the latter end of his career. Let's talk about the latest on the managers in the manager situation, and I'll caveat this by saying this was recorded really early this morning, so there's a very good chance that by the time you watch this video, Leeds may have already announced a manager, but we'll get into this anyway, and we'll say the following. So former Real Madrid player and current Real Madrid Castilla manager Raul Gonzalez has been linked with the Leeds role as of yesterday through a tweet from BBC's Adam Pope. Raul was previously linked with the role back in January, but Real Madrid rejected an approach from Leeds for the manager. Then you forget that he's a manager, not a player anymore, Raul. Not that old either. Pope was replying to a tweet around the potential appointment of Daniel Farke as the Leeds manager. And when in response, he said the names that were swirling around yesterday were Patrick Vieira and Raul. This is obviously taking on a life of its own. There's a really good thread on Twitter about Raul and his style. Lockie last night on the podcast did a really good overview of what you could expect from Raul as well. So it's a really, really good piece to watch that as well if you get a chance. Keep an eye on Lockie's channel as well, because some really good tactical videos on there. If you want the breakdown of what these managers are like, himself and Max at Leeds lately do a fantastic job of breaking them down. Both different, but both very, very good. So we're checking that out. It is said that Leeds are expected to name a new manager possibly by Thursday this week on the back of Tim Thornton's interview last week at Sky Sports, when he said Leeds would interview this week with a likely appointment on Thursday, possibly Friday, depending on how the interviews go. Leeds are said to be conducting the interviews in London and staying away from Leeds to avoid any kind of walk-in stuff. They're supposed to be face-to-face interviews, but some of these could be remote as well. Leeds could be using the gap in days also to interview candidates that maybe they want to approach themselves and have involved in the process. And then going back to yesterday's story about the 49ers process, they will take their time with this. They said they will be patient. They said they know that people will be annoyed and will react to this, but they will stick to their process because they believe it works and has worked for them, the 49ers in the past. So slightly different kettle of fish, but we'll see how it goes. Moving on to players potentially coming into Leeds or Leeds monitoring, and I will say take the next story with a monster pinch of salt, because this one comes from Football League World, and to put this into context, the video that went out on Monday this week was going to have Areola to Leeds in it as a Football League World exclusive, who are announcing that Areola was going to come to Leeds. I'd say 30 minutes before he was announced as the Bournemouth manager. So this is coming from their sources, so huge pinch of salt with this, because they don't get a huge amount right. But according to Football League World, Leeds are keen on Rotherham goalkeeper Victor Johansson. Joe Robles has obviously been released by Leeds, but is expected to come back in pre-season to train, to have the new manager to assess it. And Leeds will be keeping an eye on this, with the future of Ylan Meslier unclear at this stage. Meslier has given passing links to Chelsea, but doesn't want to be a backup. He did say he'd rather play at a smaller club and be a first choice goalkeeper. That could happen again with Leeds in the Championship. So it remains to be seen what's going to be happening with him. But Leeds have said they're lining up options should he move on and Robles not come back. Rotherham finished 19th last season, and Johansson was actually ranked number 1 in goal preventions in the Championship last season with an 8.5 ranking for the whole season. 24-year-old goalkeeper was rewarded with his fine season last year of being called up to the Swedish international side as well. Yet to make an appearance for them, but was called up by them. Leeds are also said to be interested in Carl Darlow, Freddie Woodman, and Marek Rodak at Fulham. They're just keeping an eye on all of those goalkeepers as well. in case they need to move for a goalkeeper. Moving on, let's talk about another exit. And according to the Telegraph, Leeds will be fighting to keep Crysencio Summerville this summer, as Everton and Feyenoord are both targeting the winger. We've said Feyenoord before, but it now seems that Everton, who are apparently also keen on Aaronson and Willy Gnonto as well, it would be a very Everton thing to do. Did it last year when Burnley got relegated. They took Tarkowski and McNeil from them to their team. Now looking to take 3 players from Leeds to add to that team. If they keep going the way they're going, eventually they'll have a full squad of players who will be qualified to be relegated in the Premier Division. You never know. Anyway, according to the Telegraph, they're saying that the Dutch under-21 winger who is at the European Championships this summer is a target of Everton, and an initial £12 million fee is what's being touted. It's an incredibly low fee for a player with Premier League experience, with huge future potential there as well. And as I said, an under-21 international. I always make this link. Leeds paid $35 million for Jorginho Rutter, not for the player he is now, but for the player he will be. If Leeds are going to sell Summerville, you would hope they assign the same metrics to this. And it's a case of, well, you're not just buying a player who's played a couple of Premier League games and got a couple of Premier League goals. You're buying a player who has untapped potential here as well and will be a big player potentially in the future. You should pay for that privilege. So, remains to be seen, but we'll hopefully Leeds will get more than 12 million for the player if he goes. If he stays, even better, because I think he'll rip the championship apart. Be a huge player next season. And moving on to the final story, speaking of under-21s, and the under-21s are set to be impacted by a format change to the Premier League 2 system. According to Training Guru, who claims the Premier League clubs have voted to implement a Swiss-style league format at youth level. Leeds were promoted to Premier League 2 Division 1 last season after winning a playoff final. It is now said they're scrapping Division 2 completely in favour of a 25-team single division that will be made up exclusively of Category 1 academy sides. The format of the league will change slightly, and according to the report, teams will be seeded, and this will be based on previous performances, and that will dictate the fixture layout for the season, because it is a 20-game season for a 25-team league. It will then break out into a straight round-robin knockout competition with 16 teams not in a knockout competition happening. The Swiss model removes relegation and promotion in favour of player development, saying the promotion and relegation can actually hinder development. So they've removed that, something that's very common at underage level as well. The Premier League are said to have talked about this, but the Premier League are yet to confirm the changes to this format. So something to keep an eye on. Leeds going through all that promotion hassle last season to end up in a division they would have ended up in anyway. So it's an interesting format. It probably means less chance of teams winning things, which is a shame. And I think relegation experience at under 21 level and promotion experience and being in those fights at that age group is very important, because it prepares you for the likelihood of facing that when you're a senior pro as well. So, but what do we know about football? These are the experts, aren't they? Yeah, so we'll wait and see if anything comes out from that. Long one today, folks. A lot of stuff floating around. As I said, the new manager could probably be named by the time I press stop on this video. But that's the news for today. I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, with more Leeds news and hopefully a managerial appointment by then. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.